For SiriusXM, I'm Bill Bradley. Today we have a special presentation for you.
We didn't have a place for parents to turn that was safe.
Great Falls, Montana.
Something had shifted, whether that was drug use or poverty.
Toby's house provides childcare for free. Sometimes a parent will even call Toby's house and say that their child is not safe with them. Can I leave my child at your nursery so I can get help?
I haven't had a break in a month and a half. I'm so overwhelmed that I could just walk out of the house.
Without Toby's house, nursery, we would be having problems to find people to take care of our kids. We would not have been able to work. We wouldn't know what to do.
Mom was clearly in a postpartum crisis. There may have been drug use. Baby Ezekiel was killed. She handed him off and said, I only beat him for a little while, just 5 minutes. And he was dead on arrival.
Leesha Ford, the executive director of Toby's house, would see this happen again and again.
What we do and what we offer, it's different from any other daycare. And that's what makes a crisis nursery unique. And it makes it something that actually, really comes together to protect children.
That's coming up right now.
American Voices with Senator Bill Bradley is made possible by Ford, always beside those who push forward, lift others up, and show what's possible. Ready, set, Ford.
Hi, big girls. How was school today?
I don't know, Mommy.
Great Falls, Montana. It's an area where most of the counties are known as child care deserts. According to the Department of Labor, 63,000 parents there can't work because they can't afford child care. But now, when a parent feels close to a breaking point, or a parent works multiple jobs and can't afford child care, or perhaps the parent is in desperate need of sleep or a shower, Toby's house provides the child care for free from 8 a.m. until midnight.
My name is Destiny Hemme. If you go to Toby's house and say, I'm not okay, I don't feel like I'm the safest person for my children right now, they're not going to judge you. They are going to let you know you're loved and we can find help.
I have to go to work but can't afford childcare. Can I leave my child with you for a few hours? Nurse Leesha Ford, executive director of Toby's house, hears questions like these all the time.
When I called Leesha, before I even had to say that I was so overwhelmed, I didn't know what to do, Leesha said, well, it sounds like you have your hands full. A 1 and 2-year-old on your own with limited help, and you are working a full-time job. She said, that sounds like someone who needs a break. When I had my second daughter, her dad only got to see her in person all of 4 days, maybe 5 days of her life. He was then incarcerated and has been ever since. And now my partner is gone. I'm grieving. The person that brought peace into my life was no longer there or easily accessible. I would have never been willing to just openly and vulnerably tell somebody that, man, my kids are just, they're fighting. I haven't had a break in a month and a half. I'm so overwhelmed that I could just walk out of the house and cry for an hour straight and leave them in there to whatever chaos they're doing with themselves, and then attempt to go back and handle the chaos after. Because that feels embarrassing.
And if you're wondering, why do you need to have crisis nursery? What about Head Start? Isn't there Head Start there?
Early Head Start, they are only open during that time that I'm working. So it doesn't give me a whole lot of room to go to my NA and AA meetings, because the very first thing I learned in recovery is I have to do good and be good, and I have to be okay, and I have to be mentally well for myself before I can try to do anything for my kids. This is something I'm doing that saves my life every single time I go to that meeting. Because I didn't know of those, of Toby's house and that, or what a crisis nursery was at all at the time when I had my daughter. My experience with postpartum depression was very, very serious and severe. I was going to commit suicide because I had no idea what to even where to even start to try to get help. And I would put my daughter to bed. And I was sitting down and writing letters to my mom and dad and to my daughter that I just had. It was my goodbyes to them, thinking, I'm gonna miss my daughter's wedding day. And so I'm writing them a goodbye letter because I know these are things that they're gonna need me. But I just, in my head at the time, and my thinking was, I can't be there.
Toby's house. It would see this happen again and again in Great Falls, Montana.
When I come back to pick up my kids from Toby's house, I have the patience and I have the ability to slow down and enjoy my children as I want to as a mom, because when I'm bringing them there, I'm just trying to pretty much survive. When I come back to get my kids, I am ready to enjoy every little moment and every little thing we're doing, and I have all the patience in the world for them.
Mommy.
Yep, can I have a kiss? Mwah. Okay. Nope, I'm gonna come back and get you, and then we're gonna go to birthday dinner.
You're going to that?
Okay, I gotta go, babe. I love you.
Leesha Ford, what a powerful way to save America's kids.
That's kind of an eye-opener moment for me, just personally as the executive director. They don't want to be a burden and they don't necessarily want to ask for help. And so part of making that judgment-free is also letting them not judge themselves. It's different from any other daycare, and that's what makes a crisis nursery unique, and it makes it something that actually, really comes together to protect children.
Well, hi guys. How's your lunch?
Good. Yum.
Yum. Yeah?
My food was a little bit spicy.
Your what is a little spicy?
My throat.
Your throat's a little spicy today. Oh my goodness. What do you need?
So my name is Alonzo.
My name is Emma. We've been together for 3 years.
My son's right here, Xavier, on the table in the kitchen. He's almost 3.
2, 3, 4, 5, 7.
Good job, buddy. You can count to 7. That's good. Without Toby's house nursery, we would be having problems to find people to take care of our kids. We would not have been able to work. We wouldn't know what to do. I would have probably still kept on struggling myself. And thanks to them, we were both working, and
We were really struggling. It took me a while to get a job.
I do have 4 jobs. Without them, man, I don't think I would have been able to. I don't think my wife would have been able to work. I think I would have been the only one working and only getting 2 or 3 hours of sleep instead of like 6, 7 hours of sleep. So it's really made a difference.
Sometimes I'll get out like half an hour to an hour early, and then we'll have like a quick little date for like an hour, and then we'll go and get some groceries, and then be able to just like not have to worry about little tiny screaming children for like half an hour grocery shopping. Load everything in the car, and then look at each other and say, okay, let's go get our babies.
Toby's house, named after a child who is pictured on their website. In the photo, the child is 2 years old, wearing a polka-dotted purple onesie. She was later beaten to death by her mother's boyfriend. Leesha has seen this happen over and over again. It needs to stop. Leesha made it her life's mission to prevent child abuse. Leesha Ford is the executive director of Toby's House. Leesha, when you were a nurse, what did you witness about children in danger of abuse?
We had this period of time where something had shifted in our community, and I don't know exactly where that shift came from. And it may have been drugs, it may have been poverty, it may have been changes in the system of how things were responded when child maltreatment was reported. But it caused a lot of consternation, and it really upset us as nurses when we would see children who we had clearly referred, had thought would likely be removed from the home, either from drug use or something else. They would say things like, my baby hates me, that's why they're crying, that sort of thing. And those are all indicators that, we would see something that we needed to say something that indicated that that child was at risk. then we would read about those babies in the paper, not because it was something to celebrate, but because that child had been beaten to death, shaken to death, found not breathing somewhere from child abuse and neglect. And this really drove a lot of my work as a nurse and as a learner as I went back for my bachelor's degree to really study and lean into learning more about shaken baby syndrome or abusive head trauma, AHT as they call it.
But I don't understand is if you called social services, I mean, aren't they supposed to respond to child abuse?
Absolutely. And they do a great job of like, okay, you call one centralized intake line in Montana, and then they send out the workers.
I mean, over the whole state?
Yes. Yep. And remember, like in Montana, we're surrounded by cows, where cows outnumber humans like 2 to 1 in this state, right? Like, the one place, one hub we call our capital, and that has a lot of the services that we need. And then they then reach out to the individual districts and say, this is the report. And that operates 24 hours a day. There's Head Start here in town, and they're limited in the number of children that they can take, about 160. And when we look at that, every year, there's probably about 1,600 children born in this area. And so it cannot accommodate all of the children. In 2008, we had James Mini White Horses. He was 2 years old. He was found in the trunk of his mother's car in 2010. And again, this is a town of 60,000. 2 years later, it was Kaylin Bray. She was 3 years old. Her mom was in classes going to school to become a nurse, had no childcare option other than, just leave her with the boyfriend while she goes to class. And she was called out of class because her boyfriend had killed her daughter. And here's a mom who was working so hard to make her life better. Any one of us could make that mistake. Any one of us could, assume that someone is safe and then find out later that they aren't. But she paid the ultimate price. October Perez in 2011 and was just 2, killed by, her mom's boyfriend. Like we were starting to see a pattern, 1 child, 2 children, 3 children, same year, just months apart. We had Kira Holbert. Kira was only 15 months old when she was killed. Shaken baby syndrome, again, from what we can tell. Brooklyn Askew, an infant who was 6 months old, likely crying, likely fussy. Someone gets impatient and shakes that baby. We had Riley Padilla. Riley was a really sad case for me because he was only 1 month old. Mom was, doing the very best she could with limited support, and she left her baby with the grandmother. And she knew, I think, at the time that grandma was, using pot and that, wasn't the best. And she had nowhere else to turn. And she felt like if she didn't bring him into her mom and go to work, that she would lose her job. And most of us don't think of missing a day of work as a crisis. And this was one of those moments where there was truly a crisis. She left her infant with her mom, and her infant was exposed to oxycodone, overdosed, and died. 2013, we'd had a baby death almost every single year. It was just unbelievable. And it keeps going on. And childcare is very hard, right? In our area, there's a shortage of childcare. And it can be difficult to find a place that's affordable to put your child. And Dakota Johnson, when she was 3 months old, Dakota was left in an unlicensed drop-in childcare. She wasn't checked on for hours and she died in her crib. And is exactly why you want your children in licensed childcare facilities. That was a devastating case. Really highlighted the fact that we didn't have a place for parents to turn that was safe. And then in 2023, baby Ezekiel Contreras, he was 2 months old. His older sister was a toddler, just under 2, and mom was clearly in a postpartum crisis. There may have been drug use. There had been a well check called in at 2:30 in the morning, and Toby's house is not open at 2:30 in the morning. We're still a very small, very new nonprofit, and we've not figured out how to fund overnight care and weekend care yet. And this was that reminder that most child deaths don't happen in the middle of the day at 2 o'clock. And baby Ezekiel was killed. She handed him off and said, I only beat him for a little while, just 5 minutes. And he was dead on arrival at the hospital. He was badly mutilated. His sister was, maimed for life. Um, and this was just caused a lot of trauma in our community and for our nurses and for, these families that we identify at risk. And yet they're not necessarily pulled. In that time span, we had a time where we had over 500 children in foster care with substantiated cases just in 1 year. And that was more than double where we had been back in 2002, 2003. And so, whatever community things that had been keeping children safe, something had shifted, whether that was drug use or poverty or just a lack of, you know, um, scalability of our services.
Can you give us a couple of stories of people who've been helped?
A mom called us about 9:30 at night. She was in tears and she says to me, she says, I'm in a really rough situation right now and I have 3 kids. And she said, but I'm in a relationship that I clearly need to get out of. And I think there's going to be a fight. And I don't want my children to be there when I speak with this person. I said immediately, yes, bring your children. We're open. I will stay here until, you can get things settled. We want them to be safe. We want you to be safe. And she came in just a little bit later. And I think one of the impacts that I've had, actually someone called and said, my baby's been crying for 2 hours. I don't know what's wrong. I am exhausted and I've never had to step away from my baby and I'm stepping away and I can't listen to this crying anymore. That call is an immediate cry for help, right? My options there are come in or go to the emergency room. And then really just praising that person when they came in saying, you know what? You showed up over here. You were a great mom. Look at this. You've brought her in. Let me help her get settled. This is not you. Take some time. And then having that mom come back, she took a nap out in her car is what she did because she wasn't sure if she was ready to go home yet. And I said, just that's fine. Just take a nap. Just be right out there. We'll be inside the window. You can come back in anytime. And when she came back in, she shared with me that that was the first time somebody had asked her how she was doing and let her get something that she needed. And she goes, I really, she's like, I was going to commit suicide today. And that moment for me was an aha moment of we can be driven to the very edge of what we can tolerate by just a crying baby in a few hours, and being able to say, okay, what does the next day look like? What does tonight look like? What are you going to do? And making that plan with her, she was great. 3 months later, we'd had therapy, we'd helped her with some respite care. And she just kind of turned around and said, I can't believe I was actually thinking about and was actually going to take all of this away. And she goes, but you were there and you answered the phone and you helped me through those moments.
But this must take an emotional toll on you.
Um, I think it does. I think I still feel like I'm oftentimes with a solo cup fighting a fire, right? Like we're all just got a solo cup of water. We're just like throwing it on the fire some days. And at the same time, I have to step back and think that was a total win for that mom, for that baby. Each one of our families is a family in crisis. And some folks, oftentimes they're like, oh, you're just offering free babysitting. And that's the part that probably really stresses me out because even this summer, when we had a kiddo who most of my staff were like, well, are they really in a crisis? Is it really that urgent? And we were full with families that had a lot of crises going on. And we turned this kiddo down. We turned him down for 2 weeks because we just were booked. The day he came back, he had been crying for a long time. The police followed him in and they had already had a report and they were already there. And CPS or Child Protective Services was there in like 15 minutes to examine him because there had already been signs of maltreatment. And I just think, wow, had we been able to take that kiddo the last 2 weeks, even if we thought it wasn't necessary, that's the part that hurts, is when I have to turn somebody away. And then it turns out that that's one that it hits the breaking point.
One of the things that I sense as I learn more about Toby's house is that people often see abusive parents as villains, but you don't see them that way. It doesn't seem to me. I mean, you're trying to work with everybody. Can you explain your philosophy and how not only helping the child, but helping the parent, even if an abusive parent makes good sense?
I've watched many children get removed over the years, and it can be really traumatizing for parents and for kids. Social workers burn out quickly, all of that. One of the things I've noticed is that a lot of times people are shocked when someone calls help for a child, and they feel attacked and they feel alone and they feel betrayed. If you're like, oftentimes we all do that at work, like, why don't you just tell me something's wrong? I can't read your mind. And what I see is that most parents, by and far, most parents, and I'm saying 98% of parents that I've ever met, never wake up and intend to hurt their child that day. They are good parents. They love their children. They're happy to be parents. Most of the time, there are little stressors all along the day that impact how we parent or how we engage with other people. I am a mandatory reporter. I want what's best for their child, but most likely so does that parent. And so I engage in what is a really probably a rare thing, but what I do is my philosophy is that every parent's doing their best, and then they just kind of lose it towards the middle. And that if I have to call, if there's something that's reportable or that is concerning, I'm going to have a conversation with that parent before I call CPS in most cases, unless there is imminent danger and they are beating that child in front of me. I am probably, if I see signs of something, I'm going to say, hey, can we have a little chat? And I'm going to say, I'm a mandatory reporter. This is in our program. And what I've noticed is X, Y, and Z. And those are things I have to report. However, I also understand that you're really just trying your very best right here. And I don't think you're trying to be a bad parent. This is nothing personal. Let's call together. And you've got an option here. And your option is you can sit here while I make a phone call and I call the intake line and I let them know what's going on. B, you can actually join me in that call. Because if it's anger management, if it's housing, if it's, some sort of financial distress, if it's, you know, domestic violence, then most of the time there's resources that the Child Protective Services can engage for those parents, but the parents need to request it. So I call and we report together and we basically just file information and a request for services. And then their other option is, or you can leave right now and I'm still going to have to call and you won't know what I'm saying. And so it's really up to you as to how you want to go from here. And 99% of the time, those parents that I'm engaging with want to call with me and ask for help. At that point, they typically break down. And it's not a mode of judgment, it comes from a mode of compassion, of knowing that things add up and that sometimes people just break under all of that pressure. And that it doesn't mean that they're a bad human, but if we can prevent harm to their kiddo, they don't want to hurt their kiddo. And then they feel terrible and they feel shame and guilt and all of the things. And yet at the same time, if I'm with them, it empowers them to actually make some decisions and ask for help that they need. It may be that they aren't ready to parent right now and that they need to ask them to place them in the foster care system. That doesn't usually happen, but it can happen. It can be one of those situations where who else could take care of my child for me while I get the help I need? It could be, I need help with mental health. Can you help me with that? And they're like, yes, let's get you in with this, that, and the other thing. And let's help you get your child to play therapy. And that in the long run is so much healthier of a family dynamic, right? That including them in that and letting them know I'm not blindsiding them, right? I'm actually building trust with them. But I'm also coming out as on their side.
What do you need? Can I help you out of your chair?
So, how many teachers do you have there?
I try to keep about 3 to 4 teachers on at a time all day. So we do 2 shifts primarily. No. Yes. Yes. Are you eating your lunch?
You know, I mean, your empathy and your compassion for all sides. Where does that come from?
I think it comes from, my own childhood. I think I used to say, I've built the place I needed as a kid sometimes. My dad struggled with mental health. I was in some very terrible situations. I look back and I think, oh my goodness, who else has been in a gas station at night when it gets robbed and you're sleeping by the gas station till on your kindergarten mat and you look up and you see someone robbing it with, a knife in their hand or a gun in their hand, I'm like, oh, yeah, there's a certain level of trauma that comes with that. And, I look at it as in a lot of ways, this helps me heal my own trauma that, maybe the love and acceptance that I needed during those moments and the non-judgment, maybe the non-judgment my dad needed, because back then mental health wasn't something we really understood well, especially not in vets.
Well, listen, what an honor to speak with you and hear about the lives that you're saving and the families you're saving and the generational traumas you're dealing with and healing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Means a lot because my hope is somebody will go, oh, I didn't know that's what crisis nurseries did. Or maybe I need help and maybe there's a crisis nursery near me I can reach out to.
Do you want to go to Leesha's, maybe? Yeah.
You are so cute.
Maybe said she wants to go to Leesha.
Okay, let's go to Leesha's. Are you going to come have fun with Leesha at Toby's house?
She's not here.
Well, we haven't even made it inside. Let's go see who our friends are today, okay?
American Voices is produced by Devora Clar. The show was recorded by Mark Aflalo.
American Voices with Senator Bill Bradley is made possible by Ford, always beside those who push forward, lift others up, and show what's possible. Ready, set, Ford.
For SiriusXM, you've been listening to American Voices. I'm your host, Bill Bradley.